We continue to follow our breaking news in the Jeffrey Epstein case. Here a short time ago, a federal judge in Florida declined to release additional grand jury documents in the case, which marks the first roadblock in the DOJ's efforts to subdue public backlash over the White House's handling, the administration's handling of the case. We've also learned that the House Oversight Committee is subpoenaing former Epstein accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell for a deposition, though we should note her attorney is telling our Caitlin Collins that her meeting with the Justice Department, which has been criticized for how it's handled this whole thing, is going to determine how she responds to that subpoena.
CNN's Evan Perez with us here. Evan, I mean, that meeting has potential import, does it not? Because she's in prison and might want to get out.
Right, exactly. And really, she has no incentive to talk to the Justice Department. Keep in mind, she has a pending appeal. She has maintained her innocence. And so anything she says, could affect her ability to defend herself and to move forward with that.
She wouldn't want to further incriminate herself,
right.
But she might be looking for a way out.
Right, and so from her standpoint, there's very little incentive for her to tell them anything unless she can get something in return, and she does have a lot to ask for, right? And so that's one of the big important parts of this, is that we don't know whether Todd Blanche is coming to this meeting. She's housed at a federal prison in Tallahassee. She's still got more than a decade, 15 years or so left on that sentence. She wants to get out of prison as soon as possible. And so this opening conversation, we don't know exactly what form it'll take. Is Todd Blanche authorized to come in with some kind of offer that might loosen her lips and make her speak a lot more freely, or does he just want her to spill everything with nothing to offer? I'm not sure that David Marcus, her very capable attorney, would want to do that.
Andy, how in danger is the DOJ of appearing like they're asking a judge to release documents, or they're touching base with Ghislaine Maxwell only for it to come to nothing? I mean, kind of like in elementary or middle school when I didn't want to go to a sleepover, I'd say, oh, I'm going to ask my mom, and I would orchestrate that I knew that I could get her to say no. I mean, so that I didn't have to actually take the rap for it not happening. How in danger are they of kind of sort of appearing to be doing stuff that never comes to fruition?
I think the danger of that is very high. I think that the administration's most recent move that we talked about before the break and seeking the unsealing of the grand jury testimony is a bit like your excuse to avoid the sleepover. So that may not work out well for them. These proactive steps, like talking to Maxwell, are kind of on a different level. So just to be clear, there's a couple different ways DOJ can do this. The department doesn't typically offer anyone, ever make promises or offers to people in advance of potential cooperation. But what they would do is bring her, if she's willing to come, she doesn't have to sit down and interview with them. They could bring her in for an interview if she's willing, and they can offer her what's referred to as a queen for a day agreement or a proffer agreement, in which they agree that anything she tells them during the course of that session will never be used against her, cannot be used against her in court. So it kind of gives her almost a kind of immunity to talk very frankly about illegal activity. So they would use that session to then review what sort of information she's willing to provide them, and then make an assessment as to, is it any good? Do you think it's actually truthful? And is there anything you can do with it? Are there other prosecutions to be brought, things like that? I think if they went through that process and got interesting information that they then use to prosecute someone else, I think that actually helps them in the long run with their base, who seems to be frustrated with the lack of progress on prosecuting people who were complicit with Epstein. But that's a long way down the road. There's a lot of hurdles to get over. She has a lot of leverage here because she's never spoken before. She's never cooperated, to my knowledge, in this case in any way. She still maintains she was innocent. So to come forward now, she might actually have information that the government doesn't currently possess, and that should be of interest to them.
Mano Raju's on Capitol Hill, and Mano, I might imagine if the House Speaker's intention was to just try to bury this for the president by punting on any votes or really any activity on the floor, even though you had Republicans who support the release of these materials. Now you have a subpoena for Ghislaine Maxwell to testify on the Hill. This isn't going away.
Look, there's actually other news that actually could potentially be even bigger news that is developing in a key House subcommittee right now, House Oversight Subcommittee. Democrats tried to force a vote to subpoena all of the Epstein files. That was offered in a motion earlier this afternoon. And there are signs, Jim, that that motion could actually be approved by that committee. I just talked to the chairman, the Republican chairman of this subcommittee, who told me that, quote, I do. When I asked him, do you believe that enough Republicans would vote to approve that subpoena? And I also just caught up with another Republican who has been calling for the release of all the Epstein files, Congresswoman Nancy Mace. She told me she plans to vote for that Democratic resolution to call for a subpoena for the Epstein files. She wants some changes to make sure that the victims' names are protected. Assuming those changes are made, she is expected to vote for it. So there's a real sign here of the challenges that the Trump administration faces as they try to handle it on their own. They're facing a revolt within their own party, within the more MAGA-aligned wing of the GOP, which wants this information. And now there are signs that there could be additional subpoenas coming, not just for Ghislaine Maxwell, her testimony before the House Oversight Committee in a deposition in August, but also a potential subpoena could be coming for the other Epstein files from a Republican-led committee. So that's expected to play out this afternoon. They have not voted officially yet. There's still expected to be some Republican amendments trying to change some of the language. But at the moment, it appears that this key subcommittee could vote to issue a subpoena for those Epstein files, Jim.
Wow. Significant, no question. Yeah, I mean, to that point, it's certainly not over on the Hill, right, if that vote goes ahead?
No, this is like a fire hose right now of information about what's going on with the Epstein files, Manu. I mean, does this just reflect the pressure that lawmakers are feeling up there on the Hill, even as the White House is trying to change the subject?
Yeah, no question about it. In fact, one Republican Congressman, Eric Burlison of Missouri, he's a member of the House Freedom Caucus, the hardline faction of the House GOP, told me calls are coming in. I think he said about 500 to 1 when he talked about the type of calls that are coming in. 500 of those calls calling for release of the Epstein files or related to the Epstein issue altogether. This is something that is animating the Republican base and Republican voters, and also some independent voters as well, Democrats too, in ways that some other issues have not, which is why it has been so difficult for the White House to change the subject, to ignore the matter whatsoever, because it's the Republican voters, their constituents themselves. They're hearing from those constituents, and they're about to go home for recess, and they could hear from even more of those constituents asking for some information, which is why Democrats are sensing a major vulnerability. This has never been an issue for Democrats. They were quiet about this during Joe Biden's time in office, but now they sense an opening here, which is why after committee and every opportunity they get, they're trying to force a vote one way or the other. And in this committee this afternoon, the House Oversight Subcommittee, Summer Lee, a Democratic Congresswoman, offered this motion betting that Republicans could break ranks and vote with her, rather than scuttling it like they do any other Democratic motion. And her bet appears to be correct at the moment, just because of the Republican pressure that they're feeling from their own constituents, and also many of their own beliefs that this information should be released after calling it for it to be released for years.